Hey everyone, it's Anne. We're making today's full episode free for everyone. You'll get the bonus segment, Ask Anne Anything, and a very fun set of show notes guaranteed to send you down a rabbit hole. If you want to join the ranks of paid subscribers so you always get the full episode and no ads, head to culturestudypod.substack.com. Right now, we have made enough to pay Melody. This includes all the money that we've made from ads and the money from subscribers, I think through the end of April. If we want to keep making the pod, we have to pay for it, and we need your help. If you want to become a subscriber, it's $5 a month or $50 a year. There's also a really great deal. It's just $3 a month or $30 a year if you are already a subscriber to the Culture Study newsletter. Just go to the Substack, either to Culture Study Pod or to the newsletter, and just Google, where's the podcast? You can figure it out. Or you can email me, and I'll help you figure it out personally. And then the other thing I just want to note is if you are familiar with the culture studies style of star analysis, we are really talking about star image analysis. We're not trying to be mean to a star. We're talking about how a star resonates, what their image means in the broader cultural fabric. If you keep that in mind as we move through this episode, that's how Sam and I are approaching the question of Bradley Cooper. Okay, on with the show.
When I think of Bradley Cooper, the first thing that comes to mind is, and hear me out, Tracy Flick from Election. He has the same kind of try-hard energy. And I remember I watched Election when it came out several times as a young person, not understanding the trauma and tragedy behind Tracy Flick's character. When you first see Election as a kid, you hate her. Yeah. Then you watch it as an adult and you realize she is the victim. Yeah. And so if I want to be nice to Bradley Cooper, I try to look at him that way.
That's so interesting. I think of him in The Hangover because he's the least... Yeah, he's likable, but also in some ways the least interesting character in that film.
Yes.
It's one of the last times that he plays the straight man in terms of humor, but also just in everything about him. And Melody thinks of him in Alias, which I didn't watch Alias because it was that either. Weird post-college time when no one had TV, so I have this whole
when it was a virtue signal to not watch TV. I'm not watching TV.
See, I was in 8th grade, and so I was...
Shut up.
And so Bradley Cooper as Will Tippin was one of the dreamboats in my life.
Yeah,
he is a dreamboat. And I will say now that I totally answered the question the wrong way. You asked me what I think of him as, but I just think of him as his other character because it's just so much try-hard energy. But if I had to think of a character that comes to mind when I always think of just him in a movie, I think of how he tried so hard in A Star Is Born to make that low, gravelly voice work.
Yes.
And it was annoying. And it was Bradley, you could have just talked, my dude. But this is the Tracy Flick of it all.
Yeah.
It's not just let me be competent or good. It's let me show you how much I can do. Let me show you how much I can do. And it's always that with him. And I feel why I loved The Hangover so much and him in The Hangover so much is that he wasn't doing that yet, it seemed.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to talk a lot about this and the answers to the questions to come. But I think part of what makes him interesting is he is not as good as some other methody stars at erasing the signs of effort, or at least
the methodiness of it all.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least at naturalizing it. Because to me, Daniel Day-Lewis, I'm never oh my God, that fucker's so annoying, right?
Yeah.
I'm just oh, what a guy. What an actor.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about Daniel Day-Lewis is that he's also not trying to write, direct, star in. Bradley Cooper wants to control all the means of production in his film work. And that makes it harder to digest, I think.
This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
And I'm Sam Sanders, co-host of Vibe Check, and big fan of Anne Helen Peterson.
Oh, this is a complete honor to have you on the podcast today. I was one of the first guests on one of Sam's previous podcasts, and it was the best conversation I had for the entire publicity cycle, and I have been a massive fan ever since.
Oh my goodness. I remember that, and it was my template for good book interview for a very long time. So thank you for that, because I was just a baby trying it out. And I was like, how do I talk about a whole book in just half an hour?
Book.
And you helped me. But we did it.
That was so long ago, too. Gosh, we're old pros now.
That was like 2017?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, it was. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was for Too Fat, Too Slutty, Too Loud. Okay. So the title of this episode, the working title of this episode is like, what is going on with Bradley Cooper? Like, what is Bradley Cooper's deal? And we kept it like so broad because I think that there is this like complication to his image that we've grown with, right? Like, unlike a lot of other stars, each film, there's something that's like complicating what I thought I understood about him in a way that I think is pretty interesting. And that I also think that people can't get their heads around. Like, am I annoyed by him? Am I impressed by him? Am I like, whether or not I like the movie, like, do I see what he's trying to do here? All of these things happening at once. And then all of the publicity stuff too, which is a whole thing.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lot. Well, and it's just like, I have more feelings about Bradley Cooper than I feel I need to. So full disclosure, I tried to watch Maestro 3 times because I want to watch all the Oscar movies. I could not get through it, and I tried. And listen, there are so many things that I pick up and put down. That is a story of my life. That is what we do as culture critics, writers, and thinkers. But something about the Maestro of it all made me angry. I was angry at Bradley Cooper for wasting 27 minutes of my life.
So have you tried to
times.
watch it at home? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay. This is hard. This is really hard. And I saw it in the theaters the first week it came out, in part because I knew that I would have this same reaction if I tried to watch it at home, because I would be like, this fucker, like, what is he trying to do here? And the first 30 minutes, like, he's trying to do a lot.
Like that outside scene with the cigarette where he's talking, he lays it on so thick.
No.
And it's just like, we get it, Bradley.
And you got to stick with it to kind of get to this larger picture of what he's trying to do with this film, which, whether it works or doesn't work, side note, I don't think it ultimately works, but I'm still like, you did that, dude.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, this is something, this is a good metaphor maybe for how we're trying to talk about Bradley Cooper, is that he's trying to do something that you have to sit in your seat and, like, be uncomfortable and kind of cringe for the first 30 minutes in order for you to appreciate it, and then still maybe think it doesn't work. Who has the time when it comes to a celebrity, right?
Yeah.
To have that sort of patience.
I also found myself thinking about Maestro, reading about it, not watching the whole thing. I very much was also like, who is he making this movie for?
Yes.
He's not even making this movie for the entire Academy. He's making it for a subset of Academy voters.
Yes.
And you're allowed to do that, but it's really kind of interesting to see him go from, like, the mass market appeal of, you know, A Star is Born, which still got him Oscars, and The Hangover, to not just a niche film, but like an awards bait film that isn't even for the entire awards community.
Yeah, like, because most people don't necessarily, like, have the familiarity with the subject matter, right? Like, I was in a theater with a lot of gray hairs, and I don't mean this in a derogatory manner, just that, like, people who are older have a much deeper understanding of the cultural importance of Leonard Bernstein than I do.
He was probably, like, metaphorically, like a Kanye figure back in the day.
Yeah.
Genius. He had a lot going on. You want to know about him.
Like, Kanye meets LeVar Burton, right? Because he was also on TV every Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So and, like, introducing the like, importance of classical music to the masses.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, that's part of the Academy. That's a big voting block in the Academy. Like, boomers in the Academy, like boomers in the United States political.
Yeah. And like Bradley knows this. He is, if anything, a creature of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And he probably has everybody on speed dial, and he knows who's voting for what, who's on what committee. So, like, yeah, he made it for them. He made it for them, and it's like, I guess that makes me have larger questions about what he wants the shape of his career to be. Only he knows. But I feel like he's on this, like, proving himself to that subset track that is, like, keeping him from making movies that a lot more people would love. And listen, we love Bradley Cooper when we love Bradley Cooper.
Right. Or making movies that feel
Accessible?
that feel like no, just like that they aren't, that it's not awards bait, right? And this is always hard because I think like a lot of movies are awards bait that are successful in effacing their awards baitness.
Yes.
But let's segue into our first question because we'll get to a lot more of this. Okay. First question comes from Jen, and it's going to give us kind of the lay of the land with some of this discourse that circulates around Bradley.
Why is Bradley Cooper suddenly someone we're supposed to be taking seriously? Why is it a snub if he isn't nominated for every award ever? Why would a woman in her 20s who has her own stuff going on want to date him? Why do I dislike him so much? And is it related at all to why I also dislike Ben Affleck?
Okay.
Woo.
I know. There's a lot going on there. Where do you want to start with that?
I guess the awards baitiness of it. Like, I think we forget how awards focused Bradley Cooper is because we, like, on top of being a big Oscar contender and Oscar winner, A Star is Born was a blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
So he did two things at once. He made an awards bait movie and he also made a blockbuster. Hard to do. Hats off to him for that. But he's been chasing that glory, you know, for years. Even American Sniper, which was a blockbuster, that got him an Oscar nomination, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of wanted that and knew that going in.
Yeah.
I think what the difference is between now and those films is that they were able to be hits that were also awards bait. Maestro, truth be told, is actually neither. Because in spite of those Oscar nominations, I don't think it wins any. I don't think it wins any.
No. And I think the tide really turned on the film for various reasons. And we can talk about how much of his like eagerness to be in this conversation is a part of that. But, you know, it kind of reminds me of like when I was in elementary school, I did the science fair because I was a big nerd.
I want to see where this goes. I'm loving this.
There was this guy whose dad knew exactly what sort of project to do to get to win the awards, right? And in 5th grade, I beat him because his science fair project was such a like clear, Dad helped me figure out how to game these awards.
Exactly.
It was about like liquid absorption using diapers. I have not thought about this in a long time, but it just
still
makes me
haunts
think about when you are trying so hard to win something or only understand validation through awards like this.
Tracy Flick.
Right?
Tracy Flick.
and there are reasons like what not to psychoanalyze Bradley Cooper when we're trying to analyze his image, but there is something interesting that happens when you can only feel like you are validated in the work that you do when it is recognized through awards that we understand have all of these problems with them, right?
Yeah. They really do. Well, and it's like, I also think the version of Hollywood leading man that Bradley Cooper is trying to do, we're culturally less prepared to want and accept that.
Say more about that.
He wants to be not just the hot star, but the writer and director and the creator and the person in charge of everything. He wants to control it all. And when I think of like the kind of hot guys or alpha males that we culturally want right now, it's Travis Kelce.
Right.
We want fun dudes along for the ride.
Right.
This kind of intense dude who controls everything. Is that truly the vibe right now? Is that the vibe right now?
Right.
You know?
Well,
what do we want our big cute men to be?
Yeah, like, and it's interesting, right, that Travis Kelce is not the quarterback. I think about this a lot.
Right? Yes. And he isn't even the alpha of the relationship. Yeah. Taylor's the boss, and he knows it. And Travis shows up looking cute with that mustache, and you're like, okay.
So I think about Bradley Cooper's antecedents in Hollywood in terms of leading men who have turned director and producer, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that immediately come to mind are Clint Eastwood,
who directed him in American Sniper.
Right. And Kevin Costner.
Who is a certified asshole, everyone knows.
Right. And Mel Gibson.
Also.
Also a certified asshole.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood, like, I think he is an asshole.
Yes.
He's beloved in Hollywood for many reasons, but he's an asshole.
But and like here's the thing, here's the thing, like, just like hearing you name those names, what distinguishes those guys from Bradley Cooper is like they kind of at some point just leaned into kind of being assholes, and that was what it was. Bradley Cooper still wants to be seen as a universal nice guy. while also being the auteur in charge of everything. And that is a hard needle to thread, I think.
He's chosen really interesting roles, I think. Like, objectively, he has chosen an interesting trajectory. But again, part of it, like, if I'm looking at it as image analysis, he's working so hard to texture his image in all of these ways that, like, it almost like that also reads as try hard to me. Similar, actually, you know who I forgot to mention in that list of people who are also trying to be directors and stars is Ben Affleck.
Oh yeah,
who is included in this question?
Yes,
but I personally like Ben Affleck more because I feel like Ben Affleck has leaned into the darkness and
he lets us in. He lets us in. Like, in this roundabout way, we actually know a lot about his life.
Yes.
And we know about the J-Lo stuff. We know about Jennifer Garner. We know about Anna de Armas and the Dunkin' Donuts runs and how it's problematic. We've seen that back tattoo. And actually, I was reading an old profile of Bradley Cooper written around the time A Star is Born came out. It was in the Times magazine.
By Taffy?
By Taffy Brodesser-Akner, who's my favorite profile writer of all time.
Yes.
And the whole article is about how he would give her nothing.
Yes.
At a certain point, you're supposed to talk a little bit about your personal life, your upbringing, what made you you, and what made you want to make this role this way. He doesn't do that. Yeah. And so I think we also expect, if we're going to have an auteur figure that does it all and is a quote-unquote maestro, we also expect, especially in this age, for you to give us some bit of detail around your personal life to show us what made you that.
Yeah.
And Bradley Cooper never takes that bait. You know, he's sober. I would love one good interview about sobriety and how it related to, particularly, A Star is Born.
Yeah.
Never does it. Never does it. I would love, in the press run for Maestro, which is all about a romantic relationship, to talk about, even obliquely, how his relationships informed this role in this movie. He doesn't do it. He doesn't do it.
Right. Instead, he lets a lot of people do a lot of speculation. And
he knows what we speculate. Listen, I'm a gay in L.A. All we do is talk about who's gay or not. And he's one of those question marks. And I'm going to leave it there because it's not my job to speculate, but I'm just saying, offline, people speculate.
Yeah. And he is not, you know, he's talked a little bit about the sober stuff, but he only does it on podcasts.
Oh.
Right? So, you know, he was roommates with Will Arnett in his early 20s.
Oh, that sounds like trouble.
But that's when they got sober. At least this is my understanding.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of that intimacy there. And I think that this is actually a very concerted reaction to the prickliness that he displayed in A Star is Born.
And it was prickly.
Right?
It was prickly.
Or at least the press cycle for A Star is Born.
Yeah.
So I think that what's happening here, and this goes back to our question of why is it easy to dislike him, or why do I feel the way that I do about him, is, to me, this is a calculated overcompensation. You know, so he has because he couldn't do any press because of the SAG strike.
Oh, yeah.
He did this Philly cheesesteak thing. He opened up a Philly cheesesteak cart for one day, and Gigi Hadid showed up. I think with
because
Laura
all she does in
Dern.
her free time is eat Philly cheesesteaks, you know.
And pretended to take a bite. And he's he showed up at these awards shows. Allie Jones has this great issue of her Substack that's all about how he's using all of these women in his life to wield this idea of I'm a caring guy. So it's not just I have a 20-year-old girlfriend. It's also I'm showing up here with my daughter, and here's my mom who's coming to the award show, even though I go to the after party with either someone else. And he used to be someone who would insist that pictures of his daughter would be blurred in every single paparazzi anything. And now that he's doing the award circuit,
now you see the kid.
Mind.
Oh my god!
So you see what I mean? It just it feels like
this is a thing. It's hearing you talk about him and how he's obviously very gifted, but very calculated. I compare him to my, at the moment, favorite creative auteur maestro. It's Michaela Cole. Michaela Cole, who made Chewing Gum, who made I May Destroy You, and she writes these things, directs these things, and stars in them, right?
Yep.
So she's doing what Bradley is doing. But the thing about Michaela Cole is when you interview her, you realize she's not someone who calculates at all. She just feels the work and makes it. She has an idea. She goes off to the woods for months and writes it, and it's tortured and it's hard, and then it's like it's there. And then she comes out in the world and she's like, what press do I have to do before I go back into my cave?
Yeah.
And she's very honest about it. And she talks about being nervous and not liking it and just making the art. She's talked about having to leave agents before because they didn't get her. And she talks about like the struggle of it and her anxiety around the struggle of it. And it makes it so much more personal and it makes it so much more relatable. And Bradley never does that. He just does the calculation. I'm not going to say robotically, but so he does the things you're supposed to do so well and then never talks about it, which makes it even weirder.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what we want from this new generation of stars, right? Because Tom Cruise is a publicity robot. Like, he knows exactly how to play this game. And no one's like, hey, Tom, could you stop being a robot? We're like, oh, that's very Tom Cruise of him. But with someone of this generation of stars, there's a real expectation that, like, okay, if you hate publicity, we get it.
Yeah.
That's your thing. Talk about it a little bit. Talk about why you hate it.
Exactly.
Like, and instead,
here's how I feel, why I feel. He doesn't do that.
Yeah. Instead, we get interviews like the one he did with Taffy, where he's like, I don't see any upside to telling you anything about my personal life, right? Which just, whew.
Also, I don't see any upside to not giving Taffy what she wants. Come on. Have you read her?
Right now, what he's doing is he's like using images to kind of tell his story, which works for someone like Angelina Jolie, but she knows that periodically she has to like do a bombshell interview with Vanity Fair to balance it out.
And she will. And she's very good at that when she needs to be. Yeah.
So this next question is a little more charitable to Bradley Cooper. Okay. It comes from Melissa, and Melody's going to read it.
Why is everyone so mad at Bradley Cooper anyway? Everything I've read about him is that he's very kind and will shepherd anyone through their attempts at sobriety. Feels like we're being unfair to him.
Okay. All right. So this is, I think, whether we're talking about Bradley Cooper or any star, sometimes I think this gets to like the heart of difficulty in having a conversation about a star, because I am also sure that Bradley Cooper is a pretty kind person in his personal life.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And we're talking more about the affect of his image.
Totally. Well, okay. So like I think about, you remember when Jennifer Lawrence was like in her Oscar season?
Yeah.
She won like, did she get one or more than one? She was up for a few, right?
Yeah.
There was Winter's Bone, there was Silver Linings Playbook. She had a run, right? And I remember for like a year or two, on at least one or two red carpets every season, she would trip.
Yes.
She would just trip.
Yes.
And it was funny. And it was like a pratfall. And it was always like, oh my God, I'm so clumsy. But you know what I think? I think it was on purpose. Because Jennifer Lawrence knows that when we see someone that good at what they do and that pretty and that charming and that charismatic, we need something about them to not be perfect.
Right.
Something. And I don't think Bradley Cooper understands that.
Yeah.
I don't think he understands it, and I don't think he performs clumsy enough in public for us to be like, oh, shucks, he might be just like us.
Well, so here's the interesting thing and where sobriety comes in here, because I think that actually sobriety can be a way that stars...
Humanize him.
Yeah, that it really humanizes and emphasizes like the fact that like they have vulnerabilities like all the rest of us.
Yeah.
And, you know, we mentioned previously that he talks about it a little bit in podcasts, but it's almost like he's at that point in sobriety where he's been sober for so long that
it's not, he doesn't even talk about it anymore. Yeah.
Or that like it's not as raw. And like,
exactly.
I mean, everyone should be able to be wherever they are in their sober journey.
And also, he doesn't owe us that story.
Yeah.
He doesn't owe it to us, right?
Yeah. So it just doesn't work quite the way that it maybe would, I think, in... And also the other key thing is that he did not get sober in the public eye, right? So it doesn't work the same way as, say, Robert Downey Jr.'s trajectory.
Or even like a singer like Sia, who I interviewed her years ago, and all she wanted to talk about was Alcoholics Anonymous. Then you realize one of the biggest hits of her career, Chandelier, is all about over drinking. And she talks about it. You know, like we are primed to accept celebrity like that, especially when there's this whole cottage industry now of celebrities who want to talk to you about how they're always doing the work. That's all celebrity podcast, hearing them talk about the work.
Yes.
And Bradley Cooper is not a part of that system.
Yeah. That would be an interesting thing to listen to, those podcasts that he's done with like someone that he knows as well as Will Arnett. But he's not in the like... I do think that there is this expectation of celebrities now that they do like Marc Maron, Dak Shepard, right?
Oh, yeah. And even Dak Shepard now has like an Alcoholics Anonymous segment on his show.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Where they talk about sober stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So what about this idea that we're being unfair to him? What do you think about that?
Well, we are. But you know what, buddy? You're rich and famous and have awards. I don't know. It's like celebrities to get famous and then get mad because they're famous. You chose this.
Right.
And so it's like, if we start to like, Bradley Cooper is not in danger of physical harm. Bradley Cooper is not experiencing horrible harassment online because of who he is and his sexuality or his whatever. Bradley Cooper is fine, you know? Like, Bradley Cooper's actually fine. Bradley Cooper's biggest problem is that he's not going to get another Oscar this year.
Yeah.
That's his biggest problem.
Right.
So I don't try to beat myself up over feeling weird about Bradley Cooper. I really don't.
Well,
really
and here's
don't.
the thing. He's not going to have like the Oscar curse where you get nominated and maybe you win the award and then you never get offered another role in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, he'll always have good roles
like
and good work for
the
the rest of
thing
his
that
career.
happens to so many
To women.
particularly
Yes.
women of color who win Oscars in
Yes.
Hollywood or who are nominated.
Yes. Halle Berry's career got worse after the Oscar.
Right.
I still can't believe that. I still can't believe that. Swordfish. Remember that?
Yes,
Jesus Christ.
She's topless in it. It's like a very important, I think, to many men in my life was this image of Halle Berry topless in it. But yes, that was not her career getting more textured and interesting after her Oscar.
No. I also wondered with Bradley and thinking of things that could humanize him. Does he play villains? Has he ever played a villain?
Right. Well, I think this is his thing. Is he's like, I play complicated men who are.
You know who are complicated? Villains. Anywho, go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry. Finish your thought.
Like because I think like his character is his character in A Star Is Born a villain? Is his character in Maestro a villain? Like you could read it that way in a certain capacity, right?
But does he think they're villains?
No.
There you go. There you go.
Really good point. I was just like, glossing over his history. Like he produced The Joker. Isn't that weird?
Oh, wow. The Heath Ledger. No, the what's his face?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh.
So maybe he's like, I'll produce a movie with a villain, but I wouldn't play one.
The
myself.
Incel Starter Kit movie.
Yes. I mean, speaking of another, so Joaquin Phoenix is a great example of a star who like doesn't care if anyone thinks he's an asshole.
Yeah, and we all just think he's an asshole.
Right. It's just like, here I am. I make the movies I want to make. Like, this is what I do.
And here's the thing, like, would we actually enjoy Bradley Cooper if he just went full villain, full asshole? Like, as a hypothetical,
right?
If he just became Joaquin Phoenix, if he just became a dick and just still kept making stuff that was, like, good in some respect, would I be more okay with him? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Right.
Do you think you would?
I think he would be less interesting to me. Or the other thing that he could do is become one of these method actors who really resist publicity in every capacity. Right?
Period. Period.
And I think that is probably that's what he wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that he thinks that publicity is feminizing in some capacity. But I don't think he would ever do it because he craves the Academy's approval so much, and the Academy calls upon you to be essentially a mouthpiece for the entire, all of Hollywood. And if you are resisting publicity, and we know this from
no bueno.
Many past Oscar runs.
Eddie Murphy lost his Oscar because he wouldn't do press.
Right. Monique, same thing, right? Like, did she didn't lose the Oscar. It's just that she didn't get roles, right?
She didn't get any work after that.
Yeah.
And then she went on this kind of tear, and now she's getting even less work.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you have to be willing. You have to be a willing player in the game on the team.
Yeah.
You have to.
And he's trying to do that, but you can tell that he kind of hates himself for his own eagerness to do this.
I want to ask you a follow-up on what you said.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you think Bradley Cooper finds press feminizing.
Yeah.
And that makes me want to ask you what your theory might be of what Bradley Cooper thinks of the idea of masculine and feminine in his work and his persona. Because I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
It's so complicated, right? Because I
Right?
think that he has long wanted to deconstruct masculinity, right?
Yes.
Because I think...
And a certain kind of white masculinity. Like he's like,
Yes.
when I see the work he's doing in A Star Is Born, he's tearing down or inspecting a certain type of white rocker, white musician, white star.
Yes.
And I get it. And I'm like, all right, you could have deconstructed more, but you kind of started.
Right. Well, and I know you haven't finished Maestro yet, but
Will I ever?
one of the many arguments of the film is the way that one person's genius eclipses everyone else's around him. And he thinks that this film is a tribute to Carey Mulligan's character, who's Leonard Bernstein's wife. It's not. Like, he's trying to...
It seems like it's all about him, right?
It is. But there are certain shots that he does. It's not a spoiler. Like, the ending shot of the film, it's all about her. Like, he thinks that it's supposed to be about, like, here are the wages of all-encompassing, specifically, like, masculine genius. But it's not, like, the critique isn't fully launched.
The critique isn't as good as he thinks it is.
No, not at all. But I think.
And what if hypothetical? What if a better critique of that kind of masculinity would have been a film directed by a woman,
right, with him starring in it?
There you go. This is the thing also about Bradley Cooper that annoys us. I think, as good as he is at being the jack of all trades, writing, directing, starring in, he could make even better work if he collaborated. His work might be better if he collaborated.
Yes. And this is such a good segue to the next question, which is referencing the Ali Jones Substack Gossip Time that I mentioned earlier before. So this comes from Mackenzie.
This is a broad question, but on Ali Jones' Substack Gossip Time, she had a good piece on Bradley Cooper's Oscar women and how he uses the women in his life to further his career goals. So broadly, I guess my question is, what do women get out of Bradley Cooper? And I will acknowledge that B. Coops has never done it for me personally.
Okay.
Listen, one, he's fun to look at. That's what we get. I'm not a woman, but I'm a gay, and I'm going to tell you, I like to look at that man. I sure do. And yeah,
he was named sexiest man alive in 2011.
Who isn't? But anyways, go ahead.
I know, right? Who at this point has not been named people's sexiest man? But
Joe Biden, sexiest man alive, 2024.
There was a point when he was the vice president that I would not have been
he was hot back in the
by
senator
that designation.
Days. Yeah.
So I don't see him as a sex symbol. Do you?
I'm going to tell you what I see him as. I see him as a pretty doll. But I feel like he's one of those people where you're like, gosh, you're gorgeous.
Yeah.
But then you're like, would we enjoy our time together? Would you be a fully embodied human being around me? Because that's romantic.
So here's the thing that I sometimes forget about Bradley Cooper is that he grew up in Philly. He went to Villanova for a year, and then he finished at Georgetown, and then he went and got an MFA.
Right away?
I think like pretty close. And he went to the Actors Studio in New York. So he has this past as someone who is like I actually think, and I don't necessarily think this is true of all stars in Hollywood. I think that you would have an interesting conversation with him about things that have nothing to do with Hollywood. Right? Like, I think that he is interested in the world around him.
Yeah.
Has learned how to
speaks multiple languages.
Yeah, he does. He speaks French. He studied abroad in Aix-en-Provence. Like, he is an interesting person in that capacity. Like, has challenged himself in different ways. And like the thing, I always want to be careful because I don't think that he is necessarily smarter than other stars in Hollywood, because I don't think going to college necessarily makes you smart, but I do think it makes you, like, you just learn how to think about the world around you. That's part of what college does.
Exactly.
But I do think that it gave him some of this like seriousness that like that's part of what we're railing against is like,
well, and yeah,
it's like
and
he's like MFA dude, right? Like
he totally is, and he's like a student of the craft in a way that you find a little tedious sometimes.
Right.
There's all these old clips of him. Apparently, back in the day, this amazing interview show called Inside the Actors Studio, which I love, hosted by James Lipton, where he just interviewed stars. They would let students ask questions sometimes on these shows. Bradley Cooper was one of the most frequent student question askers on Inside the Actors Studio. So there's video of young Bradley Cooper asking James Lipton and these stars craft questions. And, he's so intensely into craft. And it's like, even that, it might have been earnest, but it can easily feel try hard.
Yep. No, it just
no one loves the person who always asks all the questions in class.
No, and all the craft questions too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Melody just put in the chat that he would never be on a bulletin board in Times Square in like Calvin Klein underwear.
Hell no.
And I
Hell
think
no.
this
Even though
is
he could.
this is part of the interesting thing about like publicity or the way that he has engaged in like different brand partnerships and that sort of thing. Like he was in a Super Bowl commercial with his mom.
Oh.
You know, like that's what he is willing to do. Like that's the sort of sellout he's willing to do, but he doesn't want to be a sex symbol. And this gets us back to this question of like what do women get from Bradley Cooper? And
yeah, what do you think? I as not a woman, you're gonna have to answer this one.
I mean, I think that it's never a difficult question to understand what people want out of proximity from fame. That's not hard.
Yeah.
And like his daughter, she doesn't have any agency in this and like deciding whether or not she gets to be on the red carpet with him or not. She just wants to be near her dad. But it is interesting that he hasn't had any relationships with like super prominent stars, right? Like anytime
they can't be a bigger star than him.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Leo actually, right? Like
Oh yeah, he gets older, they stay young.
and dating models,
Who don't talk that much.
right?
Yeah.
Like no one's image is in danger. Like even like Gigi Hadid, like she's a famous person, but she's not like a person whose image
She's not
would
trying to
ever
be
eclipse
serious in the way that he is being serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then that complicates things, right? Because if he wants to only be associated with serious things, then why doesn't he have like a relationship with other
serious
people? I don't know.
But then it's like, but then you lose control. Like at that point, your creation of self has to be a group project.
Right.
And I don't think he wants that.
No.
I think of Jay-Z and Beyonce, right? The most powerful power couple in the industry. And at this point in their careers, both of their careers revolve around each other. They revolve around each other, right? They've made albums about their relationship and response albums to it. You know, Jay-Z wins a Grammy and he goes on stage and he gives a speech about his wife. You know, like they have to find a way to not just be a husband and wife duo, but have their art cater to the relationship in some way. I don't think Bradley Cooper would ever want to do that or share that kind of intellectual space with anybody else.
Well, and this is what's interesting about the evolving relationship of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce is like, by entering into a relationship with Taylor Swift, you are acknowledging that you are part of a group project, right? Like,
and that you might be on an album at some point,
right? And that's what her ex-boyfriend Joe like never wanted to be part of that group project in any capacity.
Exactly.
And I think the example actually of Beyonce and Jay-Z is such a good one because they have to be collaborative with one another. Like they are in this space where like, and they have to support one another and understand that like another person's success is not your failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like when you hear about how they actually work behind the scenes, it's kind of remarkable. Folks who I've talked to in the know are like, oh, well, you know, it's like they collaborate so much musically that if you listen to the way she rap sings on an album like Renaissance, you hear Jay-Z. You hear Jay-Z. And I don't mind it, right? But like they do this wonderful bit of, is osmosis the word?
Yeah.
Like they feed off of each other, not just in a business sense, but like creatively.
Yeah.
And I don't always love it, but I find it quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Bradley Cooper would ever want a relationship that has that kind of exchange.
Well, and this is why I think he loved like play acting the sexual tension with Lady Gaga, but would never actually be in a relationship with her, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, fun fact, because I reread Taffy's profile of Bradley ahead of the taping today. The scene in the film where they're in the fight while she's in the bathtub and he calls her ugly, that was not scripted. That was off the dome from Bradley. Oh, my God. What? Anywho, sorry, just had to share.
Okay. So our last question is about what we started the conversation with the discussion of Tracy Flick. It's this two-parter, and it's about tryhardness. So first up is Stephanie.
Bradley Cooper seems to be very keen on being involved with quote-unquote Oscar-friendly movies, such as A Star is Born in 2018 and now Maestro. Is he trying too hard to win an Oscar? And do you think he'll win one this year for Maestro?
And then the second one is from Allison.
I'm not a very, very online person, so I don't know if this is a common opinion on Bradley Cooper, but I feel like he is a very good example of the gendered differences in the public's reception of quote-unquote tryhards. There's something about the way he presents himself that reminds me a lot of Anne Hathaway, but the way she was received in the 2010s and the way he's received now diverge really strongly.
Okay, so going back to the Tracy Flick of all of this, what traits in a celebrity make them seem like a tryhard?
A personality that seems too fixed. Like you're too stiff, you're too much of one thing. We don't see a range of emotion that reminds us of ourselves and folks that we love.
Yeah.
An inability to laugh at yourself.
Yep.
And an inability to share parts of you or self that make you seem vulnerable. And like this idea that like the only thing that matters is winning.
Yeah. All of those are absolutely correct. I would say the last one that is, I think, pretty unfair is theater kidness.
Yeah.
I remember when I was writing about Anne Hathaway in like the early 2010s, and my opinion of her actually shifted pretty profoundly because I used to find myself incredibly annoyed by her and then kind of turned around on her. Yeah.
She never annoyed me because as a closeted band nerd in high school, you know who saved me all the time?
Anne
the
Hathaway.
theater kids. Anne Hathaway.
Anne
Hathaway was my bestie. Anne Hathaway was there for me. Anne Hathaway took me to prom. Okay, like.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that like I had a lot of theater kids who said to me, like, this is genuinely, she's excited, she is emoting, like this is not.
Well, even her Oscar speech, she was like, "I had this dream and it worked out."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, girl, you can say that." Folks were mad that she said that. Folks were mad that she said that. Doesn't everybody who goes to Hollywood to be a star have that as their fucking dream?
Right.
And we're mad at her for that? Sorry, I just Stan Hathaway. I stan her no matter what.
So I have like really tried to, especially because I think that the perception of Anne Hathaway at that time was so framed in contrast to Jennifer Lawrence's Cool Girl performance, right? So I'm trying
not
to
even Cool Girl, like Clumsy Girl.
Right. Like, oh, I don't even care about the Oscar. Like I had pizza, right? Like I'm surprised she didn't like take a piece of pizza and like slam it against her like Oscar gown and be like, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
But
even her on Hot Ones now, this Oscar season. It's like, yeah, you're doing that. And listen, it's fun. But like she has a shtick.
Yeah. And so I'm wary, and I heed this person's like wariness too, that like maybe some of what we're reacting to is just like him wanting to win an Oscar. And
I also think,
he wants to be esteemed. He wants to be rewarded and esteemed by his peers. And I understand that desire. And I think like part of our discomfort with it is that it seems almost unbecoming for a man to want it that much.
Especially now. We might have been able to abide this kind of dude 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But not now, baby. We want our men soft or softer.
Yeah.
You know, or like give us some more vulnerability, some more softness. Or like, would we be less weird about Bradley Cooper and all of this if he were just directing or just starring and not doing all of the things?
Right.
Like what I found annoying as a former musician who heard all about the conducting he practiced for years to conduct. I've talked to actual conductors and they're like, yeah, girl, he didn't need to do all that. Truly. You didn't need to do all that, right? And it's like if he just pulled back the try hard on every level, do we like him more? Because like when you compare him to Anne Hathaway, you feel that same try hard energy, but like she was just acting in a supporting role. Yeah. This dude is doing everything. He's controlling all the means of production, as I said earlier, and it's just weird. Well,
and I think this maybe, for me at least, explains why I have so much more like softness in my heart for Ben Affleck. Is, you know, when Ben Affleck returned to directing, like returned to Hollywood, like the beginning of his redemption arc was with Gone Baby Gone, a movie that he does not appear in.
There you go. There you go.
Like he decentered himself from the narrative, and I think wisely understood.
Has Bradley Cooper ever decentered himself from any editorial creative narrative?
And I think the other thing, you know, feeding on what we were just talking about, Ben Affleck is in a creative collaboration with J-Lo. Like, it's a very different creative collaboration. And some of it's over like Dunkin' Donuts commercials.
Yeah.
But
it's a collaboration.
Yeah. And like, I love that he hates being famous and she loves being famous. Like, it is adorable.
It's fun to watch.
Yes.
It's fun to watch.
And they understand that about themselves too.
They know the game. They know the game and they play the game. Bradley Cooper knows the game and pretends that he doesn't want to play the game. But it's like, you know the game and you know what you want. Yeah, it's weird. I will say also, just thinking about Anne Hathaway, because I always do, and check me on this theory I have, but a lot of what humanized her to people after the whole she's too much of a tryhard was her getting divorced. Yeah. And there was this moment post-divorce where it seemed like she was in metamorphosis, and all of a sudden it was like, slay mama. It was really weird. Well, but now we love her, right?
And she did a bunch of roles that are weird or interesting or like, I don't know. She just like, she was doing stuff that wasn't.
What was the one that was really hard to watch? Rachel getting married?
Oh my God. Yes.
Good God.
Which that people love. And I can like, I have to sit on my hands the entire time.
Yes.
It's just so much.
It's rough.
But I think if we were Bradley's publicist, I think he has a lot of softness in there. And again, like, this is one of those difficult things where it's like, do stars owe us confessionals? But I think like it doesn't have to be like pour your guts out, that sort of vulnerability. Just like lean into that softness the same way that he's leaned into different performances. Like, go for that.
Yeah. Also, stars don't owe us anything, but we also don't owe them our love and support.
True.
So you know what it takes to get folks to like you. If you want us to like you more, then do it. I mean, this is the thing. Like, it is an exchange. Yeah. And someone who understands this exchange perfectly is Taylor Swift. Mm-hmm. She knows that she doesn't have to do anything besides make the music. But if she wants that level of devotion from fans, she gives them the things. She gives them the crumbs. She gives them the relationship stuff. She gives them the numerology about everything she's doing. She plays the game with her audience. And she knows that, like, it's an exchange. And Bradley does this thing where he never wants to buy into the exchange.
Bradley Cooper's like, I want an A+ on the group project, but also I don't want anyone else in my group, and I don't want to do that whole. Like,
I don't want to go to the meetings, and I want to do the thing. Exactly. Yeah, like Taylor understands that like the work is never just the work.
Yeah.
It's about performance of self. It's about relationality to your fans and the media. And Bradley's like, well, I should just be so good at what I do that y'all just all give me all the awards and are always watching me anyway.
And you know, and if he wants a different path forward, there are those, like, he could just direct, right?
He could just direct. You know who just makes his movies? Who directed Poor Things, which I thought is the best film of the year? Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yes, so good.
He just makes his little movies. He just makes his little movies, and he lets Emma Stone shine, which he should, you know? But I love that movie, and I keep thinking about him and his career because I've been obsessed with Poor Things, and now I'm obsessed with him and his work.
Yeah.
And he literally just goes into his cave and makes little things.
Yeah. And persuades really incredible actors, some of whom could have had careers similar to Bradley Cooper's. Like, I'm thinking of Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
Like, wow, what a different career he was destined for, and then chose an incredible right turn. And now I love him. Like, I will watch him in anything. All right, for our last question, it's time for Ask Anne Anything. Sam, can you stick around for just one more?
Of course.
Now, if you, as a listener, need advice or just want to do a little Q&A, you can ask anything. These can be very serious, very not serious. Everything is fair game. Normally, this segment is just for paid subscribers. So if you like what you hear, head to theculturestudypod.substack.com to become a subscriber so you never have to miss out on this part of the show. And so that you know that you're paying for stuff that you like to consume. Okay, today's question comes from Ruthie.
I'm a 38-year-old woman with real-world issues, problems, and life to navigate, so the escape of celebrity culture is amazing. Why do I feel so guilty and judged when my knowledge of celebrity gossip comes up? Honestly, I can't buy a copy of Us Weekly without blurting out, I love reading trash like this, or feeling pissed off when someone, very judgmentally, says, oh, I don't keep up on that stuff, when anything celebrity is mentioned.
Ruthie's friends are missing out. I just like
Yeah.
celebrity culture
Yeah.
is amazing. It is such a great way to think about the world without thinking directly about the world.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, I'm protected from this question because I'm able to
You have
always
a PhD in this.
Yeah, I
You're
like deflect
yeah.
it, right? And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yes, I have a PhD, which somehow like legitimizes it, which it should like. If anyone's really has been reading Us Weekly forever, they have a PhD in celebrity
There you
gossip.
go.
You know what I
There
mean?
you
And
go.
I think that
Yeah.
like the same way that I think it's cool to have a lot of knowledge about your favorite sports stars or any other hobby that you're super into, it is a way of getting really into something and knowing a lot about something that is not your job, right?
And low stakes.
Yeah. Yeah, low stakes, but also like, oh, when I think about the star and like what are my thoughts about them? The thing I often challenge people to do if they like for some reason feel any sort of shame or guilt about reading trash is like sometimes be like, "Oh, why do I think that way about this?" Like why is my
Exactly.
reaction the way it is?
Interrogate
Just take
yourself.
like doing a little bit of like self-interrogation there because it's usually pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
what's your thought when people talk to you about this sort of like shame in pop culture just broadly?
So one, I think you know who never ask themselves these questions of themselves?
Yeah.
Straight men.
I know.
Straight men.
Yes.
They like what they like and that's it.
Yeah.
They like what they like and that's it, right? So
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone from a marginalized background to like what they like and just say that's it, right? For one. For two, I think for a long time, part of why I've said to myself, I take celebrity seriously and entertainment seriously and pop culture seriously is because for a lot of us growing up, the things that give us the script for how to be, it's movies, it's TV, it's music, it's books, it's celebrities and how they move through the world. You know, I grew up in a very Pentecostal, religiously conservative environment where I was obviously queer from day one. And I was never actually around gay men, around them, for real, until like adulthood when I left home.
Yeah.
And so I realized as an adult now, a lot of what gave me the early script for how to like conceive of homosexuality, period, was TV and movies.
Yep.
Because my family wasn't teaching me that. My church wasn't teaching me that. So in many ways, like the fluff of TV and film and celebrity was actually educating me, right? So it's always worth taking seriously, especially if you're someone from a marginalized background, because this stuff gives you the script to help understand your world and the world, for one. For two, I think that like this stuff actually is important.
Yeah.
People will talk about sports or they'll talk about business and they'll take it seriously because look at all these dollars involved. It's a big business. Do you know what is a multi-billion-dollar industry in America? Cosmetics.
Yeah.
Why can't I take that fucking seriously?
Yes.
Do you know what's a multi-billion-dollar business?
The Real Housewives franchise.
The Real Housewives franchise. Why can't I take that seriously?
Yeah.
Years ago, I wrote a piece for, I want to say CJR, and talked about it on Las Culturistas of all places. But I spent a long time when I was a news reporter grappling with these distinctions between hard and soft news. And you know this.
Yeah.
There's some things that are hard news, and there's some things that are soft news, and that's just Bible. And I realized the older I got, the things that they say are hard news are things that typically straight men like. And the things that they say are soft news are usually the things that women and gays are into.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so we have to understand that we live in a social context in which the very question about is it a guilty pleasure, is it trash, that is informed by notions of power and patriarchy, and if we want to go there, white supremacy. So unpack that shit too. Unpack it.
And I think
I'm on the soapbox now.
No, I know. I mean, all I need is like a little bit of prompting, and then I'm like, let's talk about this question.
And another thing.
But like, she says that she gets like annoyed with herself when she gets pissed off when someone says, "Oh, I don't keep up with that stuff." Like, you should be pissed off. That is an incredibly dismissive way to react to someone's interests. What if I was like, like someone started talking about football, and I just was like, oh, I find that like an incredibly abrasive and stupid thing to pay attention to. right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Speaking of football, yeah. I had someone, so last year when Beyonce was touring, because I could and the money was good that year, I went to see her 4 times. I went to see Beyonce twice in London and twice in LA. And someone trying to be smart at one point, I'm having a conversation. This dude is like, you went to see Beyonce 4 times? Why? It's the same concert each time. And I said, do you like football? And he said, yeah. And I go, if you could go to all of your favorite football teams' games for the whole season, would you? And he was like, yeah. Oh, and I was like, why? Because no matter what happens, they're going to play again next year, right? Then he shut the fuck up. But it's like, we are all allowed to enjoy what the fuck we enjoy.
yeah.
We are.
As long as it's not harming other people, like,
Exactly.
get into your
Exactly.
thing. Be
Get into
like,
your thing.
like
Life is hard and we die alone. Find some joy in this motherfucking earth.
Us Weekly is there for you, and do not feel like you
Yes.
have to defend it. Like, if anything,
Yes.
it allows you, if someone sees you reading a copy of Us Weekly, maybe they'll have a more interesting conversation with you because you can talk about whoever's on the cover, right?
Boom.
Like,
Boom.
I don't fuck anyone who says that you should feel shame for being into celebrity culture. But
Also-
that's the
well,
thesis
also
of this
this.
podcast. So.
Yes. Yeah. Also, I've had to learn through just living life as an adult. We think sometimes that everyone is watching everything we're doing.
Yeah.
And everyone's seeing what we care about and what we want and how we are. Most people don't care.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is the star of their own movie. We sometimes think that we're the star of the world's movie. No, we're not.
Yeah.
People actually don't care about what you're doing as much as you think you are. Live your life.
Yeah. So figure out if you like it. If you're doing something because you like it, like, that's part of the joy of getting older, I think. It's being like, do I really
you
like
want to
doing
do?
this thing? I want to do this thing. I'm going to do it.
Bam.
Man, you know what I
Bam.
would do? I would get a subscription to Us Weekly and have it delivered to your
Yes.
house.
Yes. And get a subscription for the person who questions your love of Us Weekly. Get it sent to their house.
I will say that Us Weekly has gone downhill in so many different ways. There are much better gossip publications. I would personally suggest Hung Up by Hunter Harris and Allie
So
Jones's Gossip Time, both of which are fantastic because that's the future of gossip.
Yeah.
So that's a great way for us to finish. But thank you so
Okay.
much, Sam, for coming on the show. If people want to find more from you, where can they find you right now on the internet?
I host a podcast all about the culture.
It's amazing.
Big C. It's called Vibe Check. It's from Stitcher, and it comes out every Wednesday. I co-host it with my dear friends, poet and BuzzFeed alum Saeed Jones, and Tony Award-winning Broadway producer Zach Stafford, former editor-in-chief of The Advocate. We are 3 journalists who are also Black queer men who just took our group chat and made it a podcast, and it is a riot every week. I think I would like it. Besides that, you can catch me on all social platforms at Sam Sanders. And on those platforms, I announce when I'm on other shows, like recently Slate's Political Gabfest.
Amazing. Thank you again, Sam. This was a dream come true for me. Thanks for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have so many great episodes in the works, like What's Up with Stanley Cups, and Why is Everyone Yelling at Me to Read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and Why is Kevin Bacon's Instagram so charming? I promise you do not want to miss any of them. And if you want to suggest a topic, ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, check the show notes for a link to our Substack. The full version of today's episode is free for everyone. So if you like what you heard and you want to support the show and just make a podcast sustainable in an environment where so few podcasts can actually make it work, you can head to culturestudypod.substack.com. It's $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive Ask Ann Anything segment, weekly discussion threads for each episode, and a link to a special Google form so that your questions go to the front of the line. It's like Disney Fast Pass, but for a weird, esoteric podcast. And if you're already a paid subscriber, thank you so much. You make this work possible. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod. Thanks, everyone.